They thought it was just a traveling circus. They didn't know it was a prison disguised as a show. And that behind the laughter. 17 souls were begging for help no one could hear. It was December 1891. Pennsylvania was frozen under gray skies and dead trees. The town of Mill Creek barely moved. Until one morning that a stranger arrived. He came with a wagon full of cages and a smile carved too wide. He pinned posters to every wall. Professor McAllister's grand traveling show, Wonders Never Seen by Man. By sundown, everyone was talking about it. A circus in the middle of winter. In a town forgotten by God. Nobody cared. They needed distraction. That night they gathered near the woods. The tent towered above them, red and gold, breathing in the cold wind. Torches burned along the path. The air smelled of sawdust and something sweet. Too sweet. The crowd cheered as the lights flickered. The curtain opened, and there they were, the performers, a woman with a glass eye that reflected the flames, a giant with iron rings around his wrists, a man covered head to toe in scales that shimmered like oil, a little girl locked in a golden cage, smiling through broken teeth. "Welcome," said McAllister. His voice was deep, almost kind, but his eyes, they never smiled. He introduced them one by one. The strong man, the living doll, the boneless woman, the Snake Brothers, and the crowd loved it. They laughed, they clapped, they threw coins onto the stage, but if you looked closely, none of the performers looked back. Their faces were pale, their smiles were trembling, and when the curtain closed, one of them didn't move at all. Later that night, a farmer walking home heard something, a sound beneath the tent, chains, and a faint voice whispering, "Help us." The next morning the tent was still there, but McAllister was gone. The doors were locked, and from inside, silence. The sheriff came, broke the lock. The tent was empty. No performers, no wagons, no footprints. Only one thing remained, a dark stain beneath the wooden stage. Thick, heavy, still wet. The sheriff told everyone it was paint. The townsfolk believed him, or at least pretended to. For years, the ground where the tent stood grew nothing. No grass, no flowers, just dirt, black and cold. And some nights people swore they could still hear it. A faint clinking sound, like metal, like chains. They said if you stood there long enough, you could hear someone crying beneath your feet. If stories like this send chills down your spine, like, share, comment, and subscribe. Because what happened in Mill Creek was only the beginning. They thought the nightmare ended when the tent disappeared. They were wrong. In Mill Creek, nightmares don't end. They sink into the ground. For weeks, no one spoke about it. The tent, the screams. The vanishing Mill Creek tried to forget. But forgetting doesn't erase what's buried. It only makes the ground heavier. The sheriff stopped sleeping. The pastor started drinking. And the children, they whispered about shadows near the woods, tall, still, watching. One farmer swore he heard music in the fog, a broken tune from a circus calliope. It came from the empty field, the same place where the tent once stood. He followed it. But when the music stopped, he found something else. A hatch, wooden, half buried in the dirt. He bent down, knocked on it, once, twice. Something knocked back. He ran home and never returned. Said the sound followed him for days, clinking like chains dragging through the snow. Then came the smell, rot, metal, blood. No one could find where it came from. Every time it rained, it grew stronger. A woman named Clara Myers went to pray over the field. They said her lantern went out 3 times before she reached the center. She was never seen again. Only her Bible remained, open to the line, "The earth shall give up its dead." The town stayed silent after that. But someone, or something, refused to let it rest. Folded notes began appearing on doors. Old paper, red ink. Each one said the same thing. "They're still down there." The sheriff burned every note. Said it was a prank, but no one laughed, because late at night, under the dirt, the ground still moved. And that's when a journalist named Elias Ward arrived. From Pittsburgh, curious, fearless, too fearless, he asked questions no one wanted to answer. He said, "Every lie leaves a shadow. I'm here to find yours." That night he stayed in a room facing the woods. Didn't sleep. watched the field until dawn, and just before sunrise he saw it. A faint glow under the earth, moving, like bodies shifting in their graves. He whispered to himself, "This isn't a story. It's a graveyard that forgot to stop breathing." If you believe truth should never stay buried, like, share, comment, and subscribe. Because Elias was about to uncover what no one else dared to see. He came to write a story about a circus, but what he found beneath the soil was something no human should ever see. Elias Ward was a journalist, a man who chased lies until they screamed the truth. But even he could feel it. Mill Creek wasn't hiding a secret. It was protecting one. He started with questions. Simple ones. Where did the show go? Who hired them? Who cleaned the field after the storm? Nobody answered. They just stared, like they wanted to forget he even asked. At the town inn, the old keeper gave him a warning. "Mr. Ward," she whispered, "some things down there ain't dead. They're just waiting to be remembered." That night, Elias couldn't sleep. The air felt thick, like the whole town was holding its breath. He lit a candle and opened his notebook. But before he could write, he heard it, faint, from outside his window. Music, that same crooked circus melody, slow, off-key, drifting through the fog. He followed it. Down the main road, past the church, to the edge of the field. The wind was still. The grass dead black, and in the middle of it, the ground had caved slightly, like something had been shifting underneath. He dropped to his knees, pressed his ear against the dirt, and froze. There were voices, faint, desperate, whispering in broken tones. He couldn't make out words, only pain. Elias ran back to town. He needed proof. Someone to see what he saw. He found Sheriff Dalton at the saloon. Told him everything. The sheriff's hand trembled on his glass. He said, "Boy, if you're smart, you'll pack your things and forget this place ever existed." But Elias didn't back down. He said, "You heard them too, didn't you?" The sheriff didn't answer. He just walked away. The next morning, Elias met a man named Thomas Hale, the blacksmith, the only one brave enough to talk. He told Elias about the hatch, how it knocked back, and how the sound of chains followed him for nights. Elias asked him to take him there. Thomas refused at first, but guilt has a way of eating through fear. By dusk, they were standing in the clearing again. The wind was colder now, the earth softer. Elias brushed away the leaves, and there it was, the hatch. He took a deep breath and pulled. The wood groaned, rusty hinges screamed, and a wave of air burst out, wet, metallic, rotten. Thomas gagged. Elias covered his nose, and then the lantern light hit something below. Steps, wooden steps, leading down into the dark. Elias looked at Thomas. Thomas shook his head. But Elias went first. Each step creaked. The air grew colder. Dripping sounds echoed through the tunnel. And on the wall, faint scratch marks. Human nails, torn and bloody. Halfway down, Elias whispered, "God help us." At the bottom of the stairs he saw it, cages, iron, stacked against the walls. And inside them, skeletons, 17 of them, chains still wrapped around their wrists, mouths open like they died mid-scream. Thomas dropped the lantern. It hit the ground. Flames spread fast. They ran, but before they reached the stairs, Elias saw something move in the corner. Something that wasn't bone, a figure, small, still breathing. It turned its head slowly toward him, eyes wide open. And in a voice that cracked like rust, it whispered, "Don't let him take us again. If you're still watching, like, share, comment, and subscribe." Because what Elias found next proved the show never ended. They thought they found a grave, but what they found was a stage, and the show was still going on. The fire from the lantern spread fast. Elias and Thomas barely escaped the tunnel. Smoke poured from the hatch like the ground itself was exhaling. They didn't speak that night, didn't sleep, couldn't. Elias kept seeing her, that small figure at the bottom, the one that whispered, "Don't let him take us again." By morning, the hatch was gone, covered, as if the earth had swallowed it back. But Elias wasn't done. He sent a telegram to Pittsburgh, called for 2 men he trusted, a photographer and a coroner. They arrived 3 days later. The townsfolk watched from their windows. No one dared step closer, except one woman, the innkeeper. She whispered to Elias, "If you go back down there, don't take a cross. Down there, it only makes them angry." Elias led his small team to the field. They dug for hours. The soil fought them thick and wet like tar, until finally the hatch returned. They pried it open. The smell hit harder this time. Sweet rot. Burned hair. Rust. Elias went first, lantern shaking in his hand. The photographer followed, clutching his camera like it could protect him. The tunnel walls dripped black. The deeper they went, the louder it got. Not screams, not voices, something else. A low, steady hum. When they reached the bottom, Elias stopped breathing. The cages were still there, but now he could see the walls, lined with mirrors. Each one faced the cages, and in every reflection, the performers were still alive. The bearded woman, the strong man, the twins, all moving inside the glass, even though their bodies were long dead. The photographer stumbled backward, snapped a picture. The flash burst, and in that light, for one split second, Elias saw it, McAllister, standing behind him, tall, smiling, his eyes glowing white. The light died, and he was gone. Elias's lantern flickered. Something moved in the corner, chains sliding across the floor. He turned his light and froze. The small figure was still there, alive, her body twisted. Her eyes wide and grey, she whispered, "He kept us here to make us perfect." Elias stepped closer. "Who did?" Her lips trembled. "The professor." She pointed toward the far wall. Elias raised the lantern and saw it, a massive painting carved into the stone. 17 figures around a single man, McAllister, arms open. Crown of thorns on his head. And beneath it words painted in blood, "The show must never die." The photographer screamed. The glass in the mirrors started cracking, one by one. The humming turned into wails, louder, closer. Chains flew off the walls. Lanterns shattered. And Elias felt something grab his coat, pulling him back toward the stairs. Thomas had come down after all. He dragged Elias out just as the tunnel collapsed. The ground caved in behind them. Smoke, dust, and the sound of crying buried beneath it. When it was over, the field was still again. Silent. Cold. Elias looked at Thomas, both men shaking. The photographer was gone, only the broken camera remained. Inside it, one photograph. The cages, and behind them, McAllister's face, smiling through the mirror. If you think the truth should never stay buried, like, share, comment, and subscribe. Because the show might have burned. But the audience was still watching. They tried to bury the truth, but some things don't stay buried, especially when the ground itself remembers. By dawn, the whole town knew. Smoke still rose from the field. Ash clung to the air like ghosts refusing to leave. Elias stood beside the crater, his hands black with dirt. Thomas knelt beside him, whispering prayers he didn't believe. Then came the sheriff, with 6 men and shovels. He looked at Elias and said, "Whatever you think you saw down there, you didn't." Elias didn't answer. He just handed over the camera. The sheriff glanced at the photograph once. His face went pale. Then he tore it in half. "Forget it," he said. "This never happened." By noon, wagons arrived, men in suits. Not lawmen, government. They said they were from Philadelphia. They took the remains, the chains, even the soil. They burned what they couldn't carry. And when Elias asked who they were, one of them simply said, "We clean up miracles." Thomas tried to speak. They threatened to hang him for interfering in a federal investigation. By nightfall, the field was bare again, flat, empty, like nothing had ever happened. But Elias couldn't let it go. He had the negatives. The torn photo didn't matter. The film still held the truth. He locked himself in his room at the inn, lit a lamp, and began developing the image. As the picture appeared, his hands started shaking. There it was, the cages, the mirrors, the faint outline of 17 faces, and behind them, McAllister. Clearer this time, smiling. Right behind Elias's shoulder, the lamp flickered. Glass cracked. And then, from the corner of the room, a voice. "Did you enjoy the show?" Elias spun around. No one there, but the mirror by the door was fogged from the inside. Letters formed slowly. "The curtain hasn't fallen." He smashed the mirror and ran to Thomas's house. When he got there, the door was open, the candles still burning. Thomas was gone. Only his boots remained by the bed. And on the wall above them, scratched words, "He's taking the strong ones first." Elias went back to the sheriff. But the sheriff's office was empty too. No papers, no gun rack, just dust and silence. It was like the whole town was disappearing. One person at a time. That night a train arrived, loaded with men carrying boxes marked property of the Grand McAllister show. They said it was a new act passing through. The townsfolk didn't ask questions. But Elias watched from the shadows. He saw them unloading cages. He saw the same golden one, the one that once held the little girl. And for a moment, he thought he heard her laugh again. He realized then it wasn't over. It never ended. The circus wasn't just a show. It was a cycle, a machine that fed on fear and memory. The men loaded the last crate and vanished into the night. Elias stood there trembling. And from somewhere deep in the woods, that same haunting music began to play again. The calliope, slow, off-key, calling the audience back. Elias whispered to himself, "God help whoever buys a ticket next. If this story sent chills down your spine, like, share, comment, and subscribe." Because in Mill Creek, the freak show never really left. It just found a new town. Time buries the truth, but not deep enough. Because some stories still whisper through the dirt. It's been more than a century since the McAllister show vanished. Mill Creek no longer exists on most maps. Just a handful of broken houses, and a sign that leans crooked by the roadside, letters so faded it only reads, Ill Creek. They say the last family left in 1923. The reason? The ground kept sinking. Locals in nearby towns claimed to hear things at night. Laughter, chains, music carried by the wind. Most ignored it. Until 1974, when a group of college students came filming a documentary on forgotten American towns. They found Mill Creek, and beneath the weeds and ruins, the field, the one that never grew anything. Not grass, not moss, nothing. One of the students, a girl named Harper, noticed something strange. Her metal detector kept screaming over a single spot. When they dug it up, they found the hatch, old, splintered, still stained with ash. They lifted it, and the smell hit them, metal and rot, still fresh after 80 years. They went down with flashlights and cameras. The tunnel walls were damp, carved with symbols. And at the end they found it, a small room. The cages were gone, but the mirrors remained, cracked, dusty, cold. Harper wiped one clean. And for a moment, she swore she saw people standing behind her. 17 of them, all smiling. The tape recorded her screaming. Then static. When police found the cameras days later, the footage was warped. But in one frame, right before the static, a man appeared in the reflection. Tall, thin, hat tilted, eyes glowing white. The name McAllister was burned into the wall behind him. The case was sealed. The footage locked away. And the site was declared contaminated by the state, but locals say it still isn't empty. Every winter, when the fog rolls in, a faint glow appears in that field. And if you listen closely, you can hear the sound of applause, slow, echoing through the trees. They say McAllister never died. He just keeps the show running, town to town, decade to decade, every time a new circus opens on the edge of a small town. Someone goes missing, a performer, a child, a stranger passing through, and always a poster appears days before, hand-painted, faded red letters dripping down the page. Professor McAllister's Grand Traveling Show, Wonders of the World. If you ever see that poster, don't go, don't look, don't listen, because when the curtain rises, you're already part of the act. If stories like this haunt you long after the video ends, like, share, comment, and subscribe. Because some legends are not just told, they're waiting to be found again.